Everything to do with the Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot drama is also not helping at all in the least. In fact, it's only making things worse for the Disney image, for the overall Snow White box office results.
Disney doesn't know what a Disney princess is anymore, which is crazy.
What was this Academy Awards? Anyway, feminist Conor McGregor.
Who the fuck is that guy?
It's a weird walk for a weird broad, and I don't like her.
It is, and it's really mean to put her next to Gal Gadot.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad. The primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
Gal Gadot just showed something nobody saw coming, the disaster that transpired in the background while Snow White from Disney was more than merely a poorly managed budget or executed the remake. Oh no, this chaos apparently become unmanageable because of one person, Rachel Zegler from. These two were filmed on the first and second days. Reports state the women were at each other's throats, that one was determined to keep safe, a setting that is professional.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad. And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible. Every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse. The movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism. So from the casting to the class politics, the politics, the regime politics, everything about it was liberal. Snow White is generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, nope, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige.
It was said that the other was forthright, disobedient, and some claim disruptive, and if anyone thought that these disputes were only the background noises, that they will be taken aback by the purported setback generated ripples throughout the film's awful box office performance. Millions of dollars vanished in a flash, and fans are in utter disbelief. The signs are clear that there is only one culprit. The would-be celebrity Rachel Zegler found herself embroiled in a conflict after. It is a contentious issue.
It's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
It is not racist to suggest that a character who is described in the original as skin white as snow, that is literally how the character is described in the original, that's a character description in the same way that, as you mentioned, in Moana, this bizarre fixation with race shifting everything, but only in one direction by Disney, obviously is quite strange to the politics of it, because obviously this was a big thing for Rachel Zegler, the star of the film. It was a big thing for all the left-wingers who made the movie.
Before one of Disney's biggest, Gal Gadot's inability to find love and allegedly revealing every aspect of what truly happened, but that's just. We are merely touching the surface and not conversing regarding minor disagreements over trailers or backstage gossip regarding the victor. Deeper billing is at issue here. When unstoppable people come into contact, strong opinions regarding international disputes, emerging in a conflict of the charred earth.
There's things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood.
They replace the prince with a common criminal. So there is a prince-like figure, but he's no longer a prince, he's a criminal. And I think this plays first into the class politics of the left, which hates even the very idea of aristocracy or nobility. He's right, they clearly want to diminish the love story. I think after the backlash from those comments a year and a half ago, whenever they were, they did beef up the love story a little bit, but nevertheless, he plays an ancillary role. And you see this in the fuller scope of this politic.
And a star who is determined to spread her opinions. because she overlooked the legendary. She was brought on to carry on a Disney custom. Some claim that it's the biggest meltdown in. The dust hasn't settled in Hollywood this year. Not quite finalized yet. Let's begin with what started the madness was when Rachel Zegler came to the scene brimming with confidence derived from her past achievements in. Members of the West Side Story crew whispered, because she appeared to be invincible. New talent who doesn't hesitate to express themselves. Criticism of everything and anything. Gal Gadot's international renown is a result of her. Wonder Woman's portrayal entered precisely the same pair with her own shining reputation right away. The dispute was sincere, devoid of courteous introductions. Attempts to start a discussion based on At the few bold insiders, Rachel arched her brows. Immediately after she stated that the first Snow White was irrelevant in. Because of today's society, she insisted on hearing the story. Requires redesign, and there are gossips that even question the creative choices behind the villainous queen's presentation. Gal, who had consented to play that precise part, felt undervalued as soon as she assiduously ready to represent the iconic villain, trying to give it a modern twist, a historical masterpiece. Even though it appears as a whole, Rachel thought the concept was. She wanted to get rid of the awkward, changing the Disney charm to a different one. Anything that loyal followers won't notice. The way they act is even more intense. There are indications that conflict is imminent over. According to some, Rachel's publicity choices entered with the goal of turning the discussion of her personal convictions, going above and beyond the typical Disney push for a magical fairy tale that is appropriate for people of all ages. It was only the first stage of production, however. The disagreement was clarified by the conflict that is more intense daily, but it was simply the beginning with the actual filming, and things took a turn for the worse that no. As expected, Rachel Zegler didn't stop. When she made fun of the original Snow White, she think about every hot button issue on the planet, and she let the world is aware of her prominent role on global issues, particularly her pro-Palestinian tweets in reaction to her remarks about. She embodied contemporary feminism in real life. When a topic gained popularity, Rachel spoke up, wore a Gal Gadot on both feet, and jumped on it. However, she made an effort to keep her privacy intact. Political hush, at least on the set, where didn't prevent the propagation of misinformation. Allegations that Gal's Israeli ancestry and her own political beliefs were different. Faced with Rachel's repeated claims that the era of online videography evolved into becomes more charged each minute, some employees in the background stated the room would get chilly whenever the two actresses had to speak with others and keep in mind brief moments when Rachel appeared to reject Gal's concerns or ignore her in the anger flared after a series of the posts on social media by both ladies were dragged into the limelight by fans. Rachel's critics took advantage of her tweets, calling them inflammatory women. Defendants presented Rachel as innocent, and it was impolite, like a ping-pong disagreement of charges instead of focusing. The fantasy world was something Disney was working on to create a media and public obsession concerning this ideological struggle at the heart of the curtain, and the day deteriorated more throughout the day. But trust me, social media indignation was only the start of the set. The strain became so great that it led to a manufacturing breakdown that will never be forgotten. Insiders described the filming as serial. In the midst of the constant downpour, Rachel once took issue with the evil queen's remarks, showed some classic fairy tales. She claimed it continued to use antiquated platitudes. Prejudices. One day, she openly disapproved of how Gal handled the role, arguing that it was also too traditional and moderate, similar to Disney's conventional girl who had worked hard to develop that intimidating but the captivating presence. Was furious. She felt undercut and wanted to bring a new viewpoint on the role, even though it appears with Rachel, there was no edge that purported observation of demanding crew members, distinct cliques that go place on certain staff members' sides. Her professionalism was praised by Gal. Others joined together, and under constraint, they composed. Regarding Rachel's defense of her commitment, to revise the story and distinguish from the outdated formulas of Disney. The slightest provocation caused it to burn. Excessively long costume change. A stunt that didn't go as planned. Unexpected and abrupt modification. Everything was accentuated by the spinning. The tension between these two actresses. People started to brace behind the scenes, ready for an explosion with each. Daily and ultimately that. There was an explosion, but it wasn't the conclude as the filming was over, as fans had hoped. A lavish marketing tour that was jam-packed with sharing interviews and lighthearted dialogue. Instead, they were met by radio silence, and when the time came, they took charge of public relations events to attract the interest of Snow White admirers. Something quite obvious, girl, and Rachel was rarely present. Together during interviews or on the red carpet events, it appeared odd. You'd think the lead actress who played Snow White in the film and the well-known evil queen would comply to pique interest in the big release, but no. Here, however, are short interviews, occasional social media posts there, and minimal in-person interaction. It didn't wait for the tabloids to lose their minds. A series of headlines pointed to officially, there is a severe fallout. Representatives tried to misrepresent it, argued that scheduling conflicts or combined with personal commitments that made it difficult. Appearances, but the public wasn't buying. Then Rachel stepped up her efforts to undermine her. Controversial statements about due to the outdated nature of the original Disney film, she refused to reconsider, and I continue to stand by what I. At a press conference, she said. The public relations managers at Disney almost lost their minds, acknowledging that these assertions were. Gal supposedly saw growing fan ire. She was taken aback by how the negative publicity overshadowed any excitement over the film. She purportedly wanted to keep her distance from the battle, but it had already influenced every media outlet. Any chance that a marketing strategy will be successful? Campaign quickly became an ongoing controversy about the memes in Rachel's statements. Received a ton of requests for the movie on Twitter. Snow awoke and charged the actors with ruining a cherished classic that could be humorous to some, but from in terms of business, it meant extreme doom if you think that these shortcomings were inadequate management of the actual release proved to be a total catastrophe after Snow's months of drama and speculation. Upon White's eventual release, Disney had sunk a staggering budget rumored to be. This production was estimated to have cost $250 million. Executives depended on their brand's recognition. In order to draw big crowds, the danger utterly failed when it first came out. The film earned a small amount of money throughout the weekend. Final forecasts from analysts. Snow White had hardly touched its run surface. As a group, globally, Disney is losing $168.6 million in a conspicuous failure. All those celebrity salaries for visual effects are high, and marketing tactics didn't work. Among the many grievances raised by fans was poor casting. Resolutions to the ongoing dispute. The celebrity, but the harsh truth was, much of the blame fell on Rachel. To view Zegler's feat, people flocked to the internet, calling this catastrophe the deterioration of. They argued that the golden touch of Disney. If you cause discomfort to the audience, and especially the devoted followers who, as a child, I adored the original Snow White, the business is doomed from the start. Rachel's repeated photos from the 1937 classic and her ostentatious public image presence turned into an endless array of options. There were rumors that viewers weren't there. Several Disney insiders placed the blame on. They yelled at her to claim her stunning style eclipsed the Gal Gadot, the actual movie, but clearly tried to salvage the project she poured her passion for impromptu public relations appearance, but the damage was brought about by Everyone's focus this time was on the conflicts instead of the film's storyline. After that, when the final box office figure is revealed, when it got there, it was clear that playing the blame game was only the start of the issue. The results of Snow White's awful performance caused a direct shockwave to Disney's top executives. They began reducing spending in a panic, reevaluating the overall strategy of classics recreated from other sources. Disclosed the planned live action. The adaptation of Tangled was suddenly positioned, an unambiguous reaction to the ice meltdown. They simply witnessed a great deal of anger. The catastrophe infuriated corporate voices, possibly avoided if the lead, the performer, had followed a more conventional, if she hadn't taken the bold step. Comments that annoyed fans of old Cole. At the same time, some workers advanced too. Rachel's defense claims that the movie's collapse was also brought on by insufficient narrative organization and a poorly planned promotion, but as shocking. A number of significant decision-makers seemed to convinced that Rachel's combative style was the film's final nail. Coffin Gal Gadot's function at Disney. Lose her balance even though she is well regarded and admired by her fans. Willingness to express worries about her negative interaction with Rachel in the rear. According to rumors, locked doors might have rubbed certain executives in the wrong manner. Some may argue that notwithstanding her admissions, possibly justified, contributed to the Disney's internal implosion. According to some, brass regretted not stepping in sooner, helped lessen the tension between these stars, but it was not the end of the story. Due of the subsequent fan revolts, the battle on social media and the spotlight burning directly at Rachel in weeks and days later to when Rachel Zegler was published, she tormented by outrage throughout the internet, a location where people can be named and thrown insults asking for an explanation. She kept destroying the original movie and disseminate divisive opinions. She tried to respond by highlighting critics for denouncing her opinions, which only helped too. Some of her fans are even more irate, remained unwaveringly loyal in paying tribute to her. As an advocate for modern perspectives, they claimed that the failure of Snow White had more to do with Disney's extravagant spending on nostalgic return visits, whereas others highlighted Rachel's relentless criticism has changed a large percentage of the audience's resistance to the film prior to it. Gal Gadot even went to see the movie. Despite her calm and strategic corner, she never made fun of Rachel in interviews and public. She never vented instead of venting. Inside Scoops asserts that she aired bits and pieces of the backstage operations. These brief moments of drama were chaos, enough to paint an unfavorable picture of her. The behavior of co-stars when tabloids started to. Rachel examined these revealed details. She was portrayed more and more as in much energy that got in the way. Everything from the manufacturing process to fan interactions, but the dispute reached a higher altitude when Gal finally disclosed everything in a rumored private conversations from the start. Rachel had apparently abandoned her approach to evaluate more than just the first Snow White, but every Disney principle. She had criticized Gal's portrayal of the evil queen smashed the script. According to some, the Disney brand as a whole is the scene was infused with negativity as a virus and the horrible events that would follow. Most people agree that Gal Gadot, after the box office was observed, quietly revealed a first-hand explosion. Countless accounts of Rachel's actions. She described her attempts to focus on flawlessly portraying the perverted atmosphere of the evil queen, gonna be brought to the ground by Rachel's countless complaints and criticisms. She described the course of the production meeting following. The meeting for production was called off by Rachel's tantrums about representation, current values, or outdated traditions. Other stories state that Gal even mentioned specific incidents where Rachel ripped. The talk seemed too friendly for her too naive for the evil queen or Snow. Thoughts that are progressive are not white by nature, Rachel's delivery was defective. A bad attitude was reportedly present during the birth. Thought other people's viewpoints were unimportant. That caused tension among both parties, supporters who before adored Rachel's performance on West Side. The narrative was sandwiched between admiration for her skills and astonishment at. These new findings were devoured by the headlines, regarding every myth that depicts Rachel as the unstoppable tornado that demolished one of. In the meanwhile, Disney's most costly initiatives. Gal's description of the events led to the "Did she bring the argument into the mainstream media?" scheme to discredit Rachel, or was she? To be completely honest, that inquiry lit. Expand the YouTube and Twitter comment sections. But one item stands out. These days, Rachel is recognized as the face of. Snow White's death was the result of many voices. The declining audience can be attributed to her sentiment as well as the negative media when, at the end of the day, the movie box. The meltdown in the office didn't seem so arbitrary, flop, and more like to a slowly rolling train. The catastrophe was plotted by one obstinate individual. Celebrities in Hollywood always move on to the following significant occasion. However, this catastrophe endures as a menacing fog imposing executives to evaluate every aspect of. Rachel's formula will be used for the remake. Reputation is restored, or is this such a significant controversy that it will? Gal can truly cut ties with her for good. Will she be able to bounce back from this collapse, or will she is followed by rift in future Disney contracts? Each inquiry lingers and seeks an answer. That none appeared ready to supply one. But Snow White is a guarantee. Will be less popular as a result of the enchanted world of dwarfs and poison. Various off-screen objects, including apples. Disputes that used a significant amount of Disney's financial resources and our collective wisdom. I want to know if you agree with Gal's revelations or back up Rachel's conviction. This tale is a sad reminder that, in the world of fairy tales as well, that real-world conflicts can give rise to optimism. Create a scary nightmare out of your fantasy, and isn't that a lesson in blending personal beliefs with professional promises? Then nothing